Hi.
Hi everyone, I'm Mrs. Winters, and today we're going to learn about how decimals play an important role in one of my favorite activities, sports. Before we get started, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm proud to be a 5th grade math and science teacher at Hartford School in the Mount Laurel Township School District. Go Hartford Hounds! I'd like to give a shout out to Team Inspire and the entire Hartford family. Our school theme this year is Amazing Things Happen Here. And even though we're not physically together, we're still making amazing things happen. I'm honored to be teaching you today. I am also the parent of 5 children. You're going to meet them later on in this lesson. As you may have guessed by now, I love math, science, and sports. So let's get started. We are going to have lots of fun learning today, so let's make sure we have all the materials we need. You're going to need a pencil with an eraser, a piece of paper, any paper will do, lined or even a scrap piece of paper. And you're going to need to make sure you bring your grit. Grit is a positive trait based on passion, perseverance, and motivation. You use grit when you're playing sports, but you also need to make sure you bring your grit when you're working on math problems. Today's agenda is to review place value of decimals, comparing decimals, we'll also be adding and subtracting decimals, and of course we're going to take calming breaks and energy releasers. Your teachers may refer to those as brain breaks. I will be able to compare 2 decimals. These are our objectives. I will be able to add and subtract decimals. It's always a good idea to go over math vocabulary before we jump into the lesson. So let's take a look at these definitions. Place value is the value represented by a digit in a number on the basis of its position in the number. A decimal is a number whose whole number part and the fractional part is separated by a decimal point. When you compare, you examine the differences between quantities and decide if it's greater than, smaller than, or equal to. I'm so excited to be talking to you today about decimals and how they play an important role in sports. Before we get to that, let's do a quick review of some concepts that you've probably already learned this year. We're going to review place value. So remember, place value has everything to do with the position on the number line. So we are going to just come up with a number, and I'm going to say 57. So when I look at this 5, I know that it's going to represent 50 because it's in the tens place. The 7 represents 7 because there are 7 ones. And then I'm going to go over here. This is where sometimes it gets a little bit tricky. I'm going to put a 4 here, which represents 4/10. You can even think of that like a fraction, 4 over 10, 4/10. Going to come over to the hundredths place, and I'm going to place a 3 here. So that is 3/100. And if you look at 57 and 43/100, you might be reminded of something that you see every day. Does anybody know what that is? You're right, it's money. If I had $57.43, this is how it would be written out. But we are going to move on into the thousandths place. And I'm just going to put a 1 right here. So now I have a 1 in the thousandths place. So my number is 57, and remember, whenever we see that decimal, we always say the word and. 431 thousandths. Great job. I'm going to leave this up here as we move along to learn more about fractions because you may want to refer to it later on in the lesson. So come on over and let's take a look at comparing decimals. I want to tell you there's a couple of different strategies that we can use to compare 2 fractions. We can look for the digit with the greatest value. Now I want you to think about that. Sometimes when we think of greatest value, you may think, oh, it's the highest digit, the biggest digit. Well, we want to make sure that we're taking into account the place value. So we want to look at the place value that has the largest value. 2 3/10 compared to 1 5/10. Well, I know that 2 is in the ones place, and I have a 1 in the ones place here. That's going to tell me that 2 3/10 is greater than 1 5/10. Now, sometimes you're going to see that the digits in the largest place value are the same. So what should we do then? Right! You look to the number just to the right of that digit. If the digits with the greatest value are equal, look at the next digit. So for example, we have 2 31/100. We're comparing that to 2 5/10. Well, sometimes my friends will look at a problem like this and say, oh, I know that this one's smaller because there are fewer digits. Actually, that's not true. What you want to do is to take a look at every single digit in each place value. So I have a 2 here and a 2 here. Those are equal. So I need to move on over to the next digit. Now I'm going to compare 3/10 to 5/10. Well, everybody, we know that 3/10 is less than 5/10, so I knew to put a less than sign there. Now it's your turn. I would like you to get your paper and your pencil. Make sure you have that eraser there too. And you're going to write 2 34/100. And then you can make that little box. And then you're going to write 2 47/100. I want you to use this strategy to compare these two decimals. Remember, you're going to use less than, equal to, or greater than. Great job. I noticed that you looked at the 2 in the ones place, and then you saw there was a 4 in the 10ths place, which brought your attention to the 100ths place. Great job, which told you that 3/100 is less than 7/100. So we have another strategy that we can use when we're comparing decimals. We can add zeros to the right of the last digit. Add zeros to the right of the last digit. Can I add zeros next to the decimal? Nope. Can I add zeros anywhere else in my decimal? Nope. But you can add zeros to the right of the last digit, as you can see I did here. Basically what I did here was I made the decimals look very similar to one another. They're both rounded to the nearest 100th. So we added a 0. For this one, we were comparing 2 45/100 to 2 3/10. When I added that 0, it changed my decimal to 2 30/100, but I didn't change the value at all. That's why we're allowed to do that. We're allowed to go ahead and add that 0. So I'm looking at 2 45/100 compared to 2 30/100. You got it, everybody. 2 45/100 is greater than 2 30/100. So now what we're going to do is to determine which value is greater and show it with a sign. I gave a greater than, an equal to, and a less than sign right here. And now it's your turn. You're going to compare 65/100 to 6/10. Remember my shortcut with adding that 0. Excellent! You remembered to add a 0. Now we're comparing 65 hundredths to 60 hundredths, and we know that 65 hundredths is greater than 60 hundredths. Great job! So what you're going to do right now is to get that piece of paper and pencil, and I would like you to copy everything that is on my board. I want you to write number 1, and then you're going to write 0.4, which is 4/10. You're going to draw a little box, and then 0.7, which is 7/10. You can copy down number 2, which is 4/10 compared to 267 thousandths. Number 3, which is 317 thousandths compared to 308 thousandths. We've got 6/10 compared to 6 hundredths, and then 12 hundredths compared to 21 hundredths. Remember, you're going to draw these boxes, and then inside of the box, please write greater than, less than, or equal to in the box. Wow, you did a great job. You really showed your grit by working hard and solving these problems. Let's take a look at the answers. 4/10 is less than 7/10. 4/10 is less than 267 thousandths. Which strategy did you use to solve this one? You added zeros. Great job. Number 3, we've got 317 thousandths is greater than 308 thousandths. Number 4, 6/10 is greater than 6 hundredths. We looked at our place value for that one. And number 5, 12 hundredths is less than 21 hundredths. Thank you so much for working so hard, everyone. We are going to take a look at a decimal dash. Have you ever heard of the 100-yard dash? It's an event in track where people will run for 100 yards. We have Jaron, Tykeem, and Jeremy who competed in the 100-yard dash. Here are their scores. Jaron ran 11 and 2/10 seconds. Wow, he was really fast. It took Tykeem 12 and 5/100 of a second to run that 100-yard dash, and Jeremy ran the 100-yard dash in 11 and 3/100 seconds. Remember, it's important to label all of our values. So this is in seconds. So you have to make sure you label that. And what I'd like you to do on your piece of paper is please answer this question. Who ran the fastest? So here we are reviewing, we're practicing comparing decimals. We're comparing 11 and 2/10 to 12 and 5/100, to 11 3/100ths. So who ran the fastest? I want to give you a little clue. Remember that when you're running, the lower the number, the quicker you are. And we're looking to see who was the quickest. Did you say that Jeremy was the quickest? You are right, ladies and gentlemen. It wasn't Jaron who ran 11 2/10. It wasn't Tykeem who ran 12 500 but it was Jeremy, because we know that 11 3/100ths is less than, so he was the quickest. Great job. Now we're going to practice what we learned by doing a Kahoot. The first thing we're going to do is to take a look at the two decimals, and we're going to compare them. Number 1 is 1/10ths compared to 100ths. Take your time, use your scrap paper and your pencil, solve this, and then you decide which answer you think is correct. Good job! You knew that 1/10 was greater than 100th. Now let's take a look at number 2. For number 2, we have 291 thousandths compared to 201 thousandths. Remember what we talked about? Looking at place value. We have a 2 in the tenths place on both of these. So that means we're going to have to go over and look in the hundredths place. Did you get that 291 thousandths is greater than 201 thousandths? Awesome. Keep up the great work. Let's take a look at number 3. Number 3 is asking you to compare 81 hundredths to 37 thousandths. Is 81 hundredths greater than, less than, or equal to 37 thousandths? You got it. 81 hundredths is greater than 37 hundredths. Now what I'd like you to do is to play along with the rest of the numbers and choose greater than, less than, or equal to. Now we're going to look at Basketball. Basketball is one of my favorite sports. So we can use decimals in basketball by comparing shooting averages. So my friend John made 7 out of 10 shots. Do you know what that would look like as a decimal? 7 out of 10? We can start by writing it as a fraction. 7/10, which of course is equivalent to 7/10. Devon made 9 out of 10 shots, which means he had 9/10, which looks just like that. Oh, I forgot my little 0 there. That's okay. So, well, you have been working so hard that I'd like to take a quick little brain break, and we'll come back and decide how many more shots did Devon make than John. So for right now, what I'd like you to do is take a comfortable position. You can either lay down on the floor, you can sit crisscross applesauce, you can sit down on a couch, you can even stand if that's how you're most comfortable. And we're going to do a little relaxing exercise. Your teacher might call these brain breaks. So let's start off. We are going to tap our forefinger and our thumbs together. And then we're going to go to the next finger, next finger, next finger. And when we do that, we're going to count. We're going to count up. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to count back. 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 3, 2, 1. Now what I'd like you to do is to take a nice deep cleansing breath. We're going to put our hands above our head when we inhale. Oh, and then we're going to put our hands back down when we exhale. Let's do that one more time. Inhale. And exhale. Very good. Let's get back to our problem. We can see that John made 7/10 of his throws and Devon made 9/10 of his throws. Do you know what operation we're going to have to do? Did I hear you say subtraction? Great job. So we're going to take 9/10. We need to make sure we line up those decimals. And we're going to subtract 7/10. And our answer is 2/10. Excellent job. So let's start with reviewing adding and subtracting decimals. If you haven't gotten to that yet in your class, that's okay, because we're going to learn the strategies for adding and subtractions today. If you did already learn, that's great too, because it's always great to have a review of concepts. So, adding and subtracting decimals. To add or subtract, these are the steps that we need to take. We line up the decimal points. We drop one down for the answers. See how I lined them up and then I dropped one down? I put a 0 in for placeholders if needed. You can see I did that here. And then you simply add or subtract. Let's take a look at this example. We've got 64 hundredths plus 1 55 hundredths. You can see that I made sure to line up my decimals and then I dropped one down for my answer. Then all I did was just add the digits together and I got 2 and 19 hundredths. Take a look at this subtraction problem. For this one, we have 93 and 1/10 minus 8 and 1/100. Well, 93 and 1/100 can easily be changed to 93 and 10/100. We had 93 and 1/10, but we changed it by adding a 0 here to 93 and 10/100. Then we subtract 8 and 1/100. Remember to line up those decimals and put one down in the answer. And our answer is 85 and 9/100. You can see how adding this 0 here, I added it as a placeholder, but boy, did that come in handy when I went to go do my subtraction. That's an important step. So now we're going to do some practice problems together, and then you're going to try one on your own. Make sure you have that paper and pencil close by. I'm going to add 3 and 9/10 to 5 and 18/100. I know that 9 plus 8 is 17, so I'm going to add those together. I know that, oh, what did I forget to do? Oh, thank you for reminding me. I heard you calling that out. Thank you. I sure did. I forgot to drop that decimal. Thank you for that reminder. So now I'm adding 3 plus 5 plus 1, which is going to give me 9. So my answer is 9 and 7/100. Let's do this one together. Grab that piece of paper and write this down. 8 and 25/100 plus 6 and 3/100. Go ahead and solve this. 8 and 25/100 plus 6 and 3/100. How did you do? 5 plus 3 is 8. 2 plus 0 is 2. Drop down that decimal, and you should have gotten 14 and 28/100. Nice job. And you have this one that you can do on your own. 12 and 6/10 plus 7 and 1/10. 12 and 6/10 plus 7 and 1/10. I see that you got 19 and 7/10. Great job. You did a great job with adding and subtracting decimals. So now we're going to review by taking a quiz. All you need to do for each problem is to add or subtract the decimals. Don't forget to line up those decimals. And good luck. I know you're going to do a great job. You did a great job with that quiz. Now we're going to take a break and do some exercising to get our blood flowing, to get some of that energy out. And you're going to do some exercises with Tina, Caitlin, and Riley. Those are 3 of my daughters. I know you're going to have a great time, so let's get started.
I'm Miss Winters from Largemont School in Mount Laurel. This is my sister Riley, and this is my sister Caitlin. We're here to do a brain break, so we have this awesome activity wheel, which we will tap, and that will tell us what exercise we're going to do for a little brain break. Caitlin, you want to tap the wheel?
Sure.
So let's see what it ends up on. Lunges! So we're going to do 30 seconds of lunges. Great job with those lunges. You all did awesome. Now we're going to spin the wheel again and see another exercise we can do for a brain break. Go ahead, Riley. Let's see. Crunches. Let's do 20 seconds of crunches. Awesome work with those crunches. Now we're gonna get one last exercise in for our brain break. Let's see. All right, we landed on jumping jacks. Let's do some jumping jacks. Great work with those exercises. We are so proud of you. Thank you for joining us. All right, Mom, back to you.
Now we're going to talk about how to use those sports statistics, everyday math, in our decimal comparison and addition and subtraction. So let's start off with baseball. How many of you love to watch baseball games? I see you. That's great. I enjoy watching baseball games too. So let's take a look at batting averages. We have the batting averages of many Major League Baseball players. And now we're going to look at those averages and compare them. Let's take a look at Tim Anderson, who has a batting average of 335 thousandths. And Anthony Rendon, who has a batting average of 319 thousandths. And then Ketel Marte, who has a batting average of 329 thousandths. We're going to do some comparing, so make sure you get your pencil and paper and get ready to use these baseball batting averages to compare decimals. I can see that I have a 3 in the tenths place on both of my batting averages. So that means I'm going to go to the next place value, which is the hundredths place, and I'm going to compare them. I can see that 3 is larger than 1, 3 hundredths compared to 1/100th, so I know that 335 thousandths is greater than 319 thousandths. Now let's take a look at Anthony compared to Ketel. We've got 319 thousandths compared to 329 thousandths. Go ahead and try this one. Great job. You also saw that 319 thousandths is less than 329 thousandths. So I noticed that we have lots of baseball fans out here. How about basketball? Me too. Not only do I like to play basketball, I also like to watch basketball games, and I'm always intrigued by how numbers are used in everyday basketball games. Let's take a look at three-point shot averages. So you know what those three-pointers are, right? It's when they're back behind that three-point line and they take a shot and it goes in. They call it a three-pointer because the team will earn 3 points. So let's take a look at the three-point averages of some basketball players. And as you can see, they're all decimals. Everybody has a different value. We're looking at the rank, the player, the team, and then of course the value. So what we're going to do now is to take a look at two different players, and we're going to see who has a higher value. So what operation do you think we're going to use to figure out which one has a higher average? You're right. We're going to use subtraction of decimals. So let's take a look. I'm going to look at James Harden's field point goals made. His value is 4 and 44 hundredths. I want to see how many more points he has earned than Zach Levine. So Zach Levine has a value of 3 and 7 hundredths. So what I want you to do now is to figure out how many more points this value is than this value. So you're going to go ahead and subtract. I'll give you a minute to do that. Great job. I noticed that you had to borrow to subtract 7 from 14. So you remember to go ahead and change the value that's right here in the tenths place to 3/10. And we changed the value here to be 14 so we can subtract 7 from 14. So let's go ahead and check your work. Follow along. 14 minus 7 is 7. 3 minus 0 is 3. And then, of course, 4 minus 3 is 1. So when you are asked the question, how many more points did James get than Zach, the answer will be 1 and 37 hundredths points. Excellent job. Now we're going to take a look at another sport, and I'm going to have you try to guess which sport I'm talking about. I'll give you a few clues. In this sport, you cannot use your hands. Well, the goalie can use their hands. Most players cannot use their hands in this sport. Sometimes you will find players bouncing a ball off of their head, and most of the time you will see players kicking the ball. Oh, what was that? You said soccer. You're right. That is the next game that we're going to talk about and how decimals are used in the game of soccer. So as you can see from the chart, in soccer, we use decimals to represent goals per game. Take a look at Denmark, who has an average of 4.4 goals per game. That's 4 and 4/10. Take a look at Denmark, who has an average of 4 and 4 hundredths. So let's look at Denmark compared to Armenia. So we can see that Denmark scores 4 and 4/10 goals per game. We can see that Armenia scores 4 and 11 hundredths. So let's go ahead and do the math. I'm going to ask you again, which operation do we want to use to figure out how many more goals Denmark has scored on an average per game? Did you say subtraction? That's right. We're going to go ahead and subtract again. We are going to take a look at which value should we place first. I heard you say Denmark. That's right. We want to place Denmark first because that is the greater value. So let's go ahead and take a look at Denmark, which has 4 and 4/10. That is their goals per game, their average goals per game. And let's compare that to Armenia, who has 4 and 11 hundredths points per game. Now you told me that I should subtract and you were right on target with that. So I'm going to go ahead and put my subtraction sign, but oh boy, I can see here that I only have 1 digit here and I have 2 digits here. Does anybody remember from earlier on in the lesson what we said we needed to do? That's right. We want to add zeros. We want to add those placeholders, which essentially is really just turning 4 and 4/10 into 4 and 40 hundredths. Great job. So we're going to take 4 and 40 hundredths. We have 40 minus 11, which of course is going to give us 29. Of course, you could have always changed that to a 10 and change that to a 3. So we would have 10 minus 1 is 9, 3 minus 1 is 2, and, got to remember to bring down that decimal, right, guys? And of course, 4 minus 4 is 0. So the difference between Denmark and Armenia is 29 hundredths. Now we're going to do a math puzzle together. Riley's going to read you a story, and then we're going to try to solve the mystery after we read it. Go ahead, Ry.
3 friends have a meal in a restaurant and they are charged $25. They each chip in with a $10 bill and hand it to the waiter. The waiter, though, isn't very good at math, like dividing the $5 change by 3, so he keeps $2 as a tip and hands each friend $1. Everyone seems pretty happy with the deal until one of the friends starts thinking about it. The 3 of them paid $10 each but got $1 back, so that meant they still paid $10. They still spent $9 each. And since there were 3 of them, the total was 3 times $9 or $27 plus the $2 tip for the waiter. That takes the total to $29. What happened to the missing dollar?
Riley, what do you think happened to the missing dollar? We have to think about this, ladies and gentlemen. So he said that it was $27 plus the $2 tip. Did they pay $27 plus the $2 tip? Or should he have subtracted the $2? You're right. He definitely should have subtracted that $2. $27 minus $2 for the tip brings us to $25, which was the original price. Make sure that you remember when you're solving word problems to read every word carefully. Let's take a look at a couple of games that we can play with items that you probably have around your house. You can play this game if you have cards, dice, or really anything with numbers on it. You can also make your own just by taking some scrap paper, cutting it up, and placing numbers on it. So it's called adding decimals, and you can play with 1 or 2 people. Today, we're going to play with 2 people because I have my daughter Riley here with me. So, first thing I'm going to do is show you how to play with cards. So, I'm going to go first, and I drew a 2. Then I drew a 3, then an 8, and another 8. So now it's my job to go ahead and place a little decimal point in between the 2 and the 3, place a decimal point between the 2 8s, and I'm going to copy this down and add them together. So I'm going to do 2 and 3/10 plus 8 and 8/10. I'm going to add them up. What would be a good estimate for adding 2 and 3/10 plus 8 and 8/10? Right, 10 would be a great estimate when adding those decimals together. Let's make sure we get close to 10. Remember, the first step is to drop down that decimal. We don't want to forget that. We've already lined them up. And now I'm just going to add the digits in the tenths place. 3 plus 8 is 11. 8 plus 2 is 10, plus 1 is 11. So I have 11 and 1/10. So Riley, now it's going to be your turn to play. And we're going to have Riley pick 4 cards, and she's going to do the same thing, and we're going to see who has the larger sum. So Riley got 6 and 3/10. Then she got 4 and 8/10. Riley, what would be a really good estimate when you're rounding as a whole number?
10.
Good, very nice. So your estimate is 10. Let's make sure you get close to 10. Here, we're going to come on over here, and you are going to do your addition. That's 6 and 3/10 plus 4 and 2/10. Oh boy, look at Riley. She just totally disregards those little lines there. I usually use them to help space them out, but we can see Riley kind of just decide, which is perfectly fine, which is why scrap paper is more than okay. So Riley, your sum was 10 and 5/10. My sum was 11 and 1/10. Who won this round?
You.
I won this round. I hope you had fun playing. And remember, you can play this game at home. Have fun.
Everyone has been so great today. You've been excellent students, and I'm so proud of your grit, of your hard work, and of your enthusiasm. I hope that you had just as much fun as I did teaching today. Make it a great day. Bye.